When you allude to the companies that have kind of made a statement, hey, we're going to use AI or AI related processes, but that has a repercussion on the human labor force, it kind of gets people on, like the cat's hair rising on the defensive. And I think it's important, therefore, for the leader, and this is where the leadership role comes into play, is you need to understand how you're going to use what you're going to use and what is going to be the impact. And if it is going to have an impact, then think as a leader on what you want to do with your very trained, very skilled labor force or people, teams and partners that you're already invested in. Train them in the domain. You need to be able to see that while yes, certain activities are automated, how do you present the flip side? People that you may not have to do this, but let me give you an opportunity to grow yourself in a different direction. Now, if you talk about absolute values of reduction in manual processes and AI kind of replacing you, it is scary.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rob Ocel, VP of Innovation at This.Labs, here for another episode of the Leadership Exchange. Today, I'm here with Priya Sarathy, who is a PhD. Do you prefer Dr. Sarathy?
I'm good with Priya. Thank you.
Okay, Priya it will be. Priya, we brought you in because we were so excited to see the business leadership class and the workshop that you have for senior execs, kind of covering the topics of AI, the promise of it, and like what leaders need to be aware of. So we're super excited to bring you in and have a conversation about it. And I think maybe that'll be my first question, is just what have you seen as sort of the opportunities with AI that sort of led you to kind of pursue this business class and this workshop path?
Yes, that is a good question. Should I give you my marketing spiel version of
Sure.
this thing?
Sure, we will forgive it right now, yes.
Okay. Well, really speaking, it's from my experiences working across different industries. I have led more of the AI solutioning, enablement, and delivery. And what I find is it has been a struggle. And what sometimes really works well in one scenario really falls on its face in another scenario. So I felt that what brought the team together for its success was really the role of leadership. The leaders, if they took an interest, if they were there for your stakeholder meetings, for setting the path and making sure you are constantly in scope or constantly have access to resources that enable something to happen, it really makes a difference. We can break timelines, we can make it into really short, successful, and something that the customers like. So that was the experience I learned from many. And I wanted to make sure that as we move from just analytics to AI, that scope of impact has so expanded. And so the role and the importance that leadership plays has also grown. And so that is where I was addressing my workshop, is to see if you could bring leaders together in a room, in person, preferably, and have them reflect on these elements, these components that make or break a project, in specific with AI. And what I discover is many are just unaware of what it is one should be thinking about. Given they all experience domain experts, this is just an incremental pivot that they needed, and at the end of the day, they were thankful from what they learned. It could be something as trivial as start with the business need in the end. Don't build AI, but start with the business need and then use AI. Just a little bit of mindset, just a change. So that's where the workshop started.
It's kind of interesting the time that we find ourselves in. At least at the time that we're recording this, we're very fresh off of MS Build, and Google had a big announcements, and Anthropic just did a bunch of announcements. So we are suddenly awash in new visions of our near future as far as what AI can do, what people expect it to do. And I think, what's been difficult for everyone, and certainly for business leaders, is trying to separate out what is hype and futuristic and vision casting versus what is practical and what can actually realize value for their businesses. And I think I've seen a lot of business leaders sort of throw their hands up because there's just so difficult to parse through all this and just sort of say, I'll wait to see what comes out. Like we'll watch for a year or so. At that point, everything will settle and we'll know what the path is. Like, what is wrong, if anything, with that line of thinking? Like, is it okay for people to sort of be sitting out and just sort of monitoring what's going on?
I think there are two sides of every issue, and I think there is a case to be made for sitting it out or being in the game. It actually depends on the mindset, on the vision of each company. So if I can think about it, if you were thinking, reflect back in time where, Excel, I think Excel is, I go back to it because it has changed our lives so much, right?
Yeah.
Initially, when Excel came, it was 20, 25 years ago, people were hesitant. People thought it was something for folks with advanced knowledge of working with data and numbers. Today, Excel becomes where you want to go to, even if you want to do a simple calculation, 2 rows, 2 columns, that's it, you go to it. And I think for that to happen, it took a long time to change the behaviors. Now, had we started using Excel across the board much earlier, maybe we would have become more ready to adopt AI today because it's more tedious versus it's less tedious now if you just ask the a GPT or a model to say, hey, what is the best model I want? It comes out. So I think it's okay to step back, but it's not okay to just step back and ignore. And I think that is important because in all this, you may not want to take the first step to bring AI into in-house, but you have to take the step to make sure you understand what you have there outside and what it may or may not do for you. And what it can do is something you need to be aware and think about, even if you're on the sidelines. So I would say, yes, people are kind of overwhelmed with information, so they don't know where to start. It's like that little ball of wool. You don't know which one to start unraveling. But you need to understand and pick that ball of wool up and start looking at it. So I think there's a building of AI fluency and awareness or AI literacy, even if you're not working it.
I really like that. I like that a lot because I think that is a common mistake, right? Is this idea that there is something happening. There's a lot of people running in a direction. I don't know what's going on, but let's just run in that direction. It can't be wrong if that's where everybody is running type of situation. And so I love this idea of teasing out the need for action with the need for understanding, or as you called it, fluency. So what are some of the, I guess, things that people could be doing or that people might be doing incorrectly as they are seeking that AI fluency? Like, what might be some of the things that you're recommending to people in your workshop?
So I give the example when I was setting up the workshop. I talked to many different people on what their needs was and would they find this workshop valuable, right? And I think one of the questions that, not the question, one of the statement that this person made was, he said, Priya, I want my folks to take the class. I want to build the AI awareness before I give them the tool because I want them to be responsible on how they use it. So when you talk about what should one do, we need to kind of understand the use cases. So in my class, what I like telling is, do you know, one, simple questions, who is going to be impacted by this opportunity that you're thinking about? Does it have a head? The head being the business goal, the business, strategic vision. How is that head connected to the rest of the different parts of the environment? So once you have the business goals and the business objectives in front of you, and then you are planning on how to take it and bring AI into it, then now you can come to the next part of it is who's going to be involved in it. And I think two statements, that first business goals and the second, the stakeholder, I had a very long interactive session in the workshop because people said, we never thought about it. Why should we bring procurement into it? What about the UI and UX? I said, all of this makes a difference. Foremost, have you got your customer into it? So,
Oh yeah. Well, we joke a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, it is difficult. I think that's been one of the big challenges of AI is that it stresses your imagination. This is not a business as usual piece. Like, you talked about like procurement. This is not the same thing as saying, well, hey, we want to move from AWS to Azure. This is not the same thing as saying we're going to buy this new off-the-shelf technology and integrate it to improve efficiencies. Yeah. This is really something more fundamental. And it can maybe be difficult if you haven't been working on that fluency to even begin to understand how it could connect to business goals, because to some extent what your goals are and what you hope you could even achieve with this technology sort of change as you understand it or as you've been inspired by watching other examples. Has that kind of been your experience as well?
Yes, I think, first of all, I would say even though organizations pick up this fluency, I think one part of the awareness needs to be a prerequisite, right? And I think in my experience, people have always taken analytics and technology as two separate pieces. And the idea is, besides what we talk about, understanding who all the role players are going to be engaged in this process, it's also important to think through that AI is not a technology. AI is not all pure data science. AI is not about just having AI literacy, right? It is what I call in my book a trilingual fluency that we have to bring in. AI is about data, understanding your data, understanding your technology, and understanding the algorithms and the users, because I think I put them in together. So all those three need to kind of come together, because if you focus on an initiative thinking that technology will get you to it, it's not going to happen. And in my experience, that typically has happened, which is why I always have recommended or suggested that we talk and come to the table, have a discussion around the table at par with equity in it. So I may know something, you may know something. So the technology allows you to understand challenges or capabilities that you can do. And from your side as a product team, you then say, okay, if this is the scenario we could do and set up a message in a certain way. So I think what I find most is the inability of those three pieces to act in cohesion. And I think that is so, so important with AI, anything AI.
All right. Well, we have more of our conversation to come, but first we'd like to thank today's sponsor, This.Labs. Oops, hang on, I have to say that again. I just scrolled down past my ad read. Luke, fix that first ad read. All right, we have more of our conversation to come, but first we'd like to thank today's sponsor, This.Labs. This episode is brought to you by This.Labs, your experts in modern web development and consulting. If you're looking to scale up your development teams efficiently or need assistance in turning your innovative ideas into reality with robust proofs of concept, This.Labs has you covered. This.Labs doesn't just build software, they build partnerships. They collaborate closely with your team to understand your unique challenges and craft tailored solutions that drive real results. Join the many companies that have accelerated their growth and innovation with the help of This.Labs. Visit this.co to discover how they can help you take your projects to the next level. Thanks to This.Labs and my team for sponsoring this episode and for supporting the developer community. All right, back to our episode. So Priya, one of the questions that I've had, and honestly, I've talked to some people, but I'm curious what your experiences have been, which is to say, how are leaders that are non-technical in nature challenged in their leadership in this moment? I think it could be very, I work a lot with software developers and technologists who you would imagine would be on top of this AI thing. And I'll be honest, many of them have no idea how any of this works. And there are many myths and misunderstandings that are floating around, even the highly technical parts of the developer community. So I'm curious, what are those challenges that you're seeing with leaders and how they're building this fluency and how they're leading their organizations with adopting and sort of implementing AI if they themselves are maybe not strongly technical themselves?
Okay, so what people have told me is they just listen to somebody in the organization who's taking the lead to saying, hey, we need to do A with AI or B with AI. So typically it's the co-pilot, right? So, so you've been told to test and validate Copilot, and you are basically identifying a few folks. I've had leaders saying, hey, I don't want to use it. I want my team to use it and tell me and give me feedback. It's like, no, I think you should be using it. But so I think that to me is a challenge, because either they are pushing the awareness, the ability to build up that AI literacy down to their team, saying that, hey, you are great code developers, go develop the code and learn how to use this if you need to develop code with the tool I've given you. And I think what is happening is they are missing a step. So they themselves haven't explored it. Now their team is exploring it. The team is going to have a different viewpoint. The question is, does the leader use Copilot for, even if it's email, communication, slide building, and get the sense of how it has been used or can be used? Because I think with that, a leader can generally identify how his team can be more productive, because this is what his expectations are. And once they know how to measure what is happening as an outcome, they can then measure the success of the deployment with the team. And deployment is a too technical word. It's one of those testing, right? It's just being tested. You just give it to them, and 3 months later you say, so how did you feel? What did you do? Can you do better? But the leader doesn't understand that they need to have a proper measure before and after. So when they report back to this, the AI person in charge, it could be a COE, whatever, or it could be a board for AI. And that's typically where I'm seeing work groups come together to talk about AI and its value. That value proposition is measured for success. It is not measured, not left unmeasured, or using metrics that can't relate back for the company. So I think that's one of the key things, but I will let you respond and then I can add more if you want.
Sure. Yeah, I like that. I do agree with you that I don't think that this sort of AI transformation process that we're going through can be executed bottom up. Like you said, I don't think that this is a cut a check, give it to the members of your organization and see what they build with it type of thing. That can certainly be an element of what your company does. But I feel like that vision and that leadership really does come from the top, that excitement, that sort of idea of what is inspiring to our organization around AI, both internally and externally. What is it that resonates with our core mission, with our customers, with our business value? I think you don't need to be technical as a leader to be excited by this technology. You don't have to be technical to feel inspired by what your company might be capable of doing with that technology. And I think that excitement can be infectious. And I think that's a key part maybe of organizations being successful here, is that it really does need to be kind of a top-down. I mean, it needs to be holistic, but I think certainly the excitement and the drive behind it probably needs to be something that is top-down to get the right alignment across the organization on it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I would say is, if you're putting together a business plan, you're thinking about what you need to do next. If you don't have that personal experience or connection to that technology or the AI piece that you're using, then how can you make that plan really effective, right? So that is where I think we need to kind of think about, is have leaders understand what the box, give them the gift box and let them unwrap it. And then they can share the goodies.
I like that. And who doesn't love that part, right? We've seen, though, that excitement maybe sometimes go a little far. We've seen some notable examples in the news recently of companies that have maybe shared broadly their vision, or that vision was unintentionally shared broadly, of what their vision would for AI would mean for their organization, right? And without going into specifics, I think what it told me is that this excitement needs to be tempered, and it needs to be properly framed in the context of the fact that there are a lot of people out there for whom this technology is not exciting, or they might even perceive it to be challenging. They might believe that this is going to lead to reductions in their opportunities, or they think that the organization might be pursuing AI in order to eliminate their jobs and things of that nature. So I guess my question for you is just, what are some of the mistakes I suppose you've seen people make as they've started doing this process of transformation? And what is your argument for how people should be correcting for those mistakes, I suppose, as far as how they're planning to deploy AI, or whether or not it's considered something that is meant to replace people or not?
Yeah, I've been to a few conferences where I tried talking to folks who are actually testing, and they are very discreetly and polite about, yeah, we are using generative AI, but we can't share anything with you, because they don't know how it's going to go. Yeah. So what I think that kind of reflects is people are optimistically cautious or cautiously optimistic. I would say the other way around. So when you allude to the companies that have kind of made a statement, hey, we're going to use AI or AI related processes, AI related automation, but that has a repercussion on the human labor force. It kind of gets people on, like the cat's hair rising on the defensive.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, therefore, for the leader, and this is where the leadership role comes into play, is you need to understand how you're going to use what you're going to use and what is going to be the impact. And if it is going to have an impact, then think as a leader on what you want to do with your very trained, very skilled labor force or people, teams, and partners that you're already invested in. Train them in the domain. You need to be able to see that while, yes, certain activities are automated, how do you present the flip side?
Mm-hmm.
People that you may not have to do this, but let me give you an opportunity to grow yourself in a different direction. Now, if you talk about absolute values of reduction in manual processes and AI kind of replacing you, it is scary. And I keep bringing back this one piece of what AI is really doing. When you put in AI initiatives, AI processes, yes, it may take away some of that coding, some of the model building, but now it has truly created other roles, because as the domain expert, you have to monitor that model that's being built automatically. You have to spend time interrogating the code that has been developed to see, has it been built to your specification? Because AI is still not mature today. So we still have to be what you and I have always heard, the human in the loop, because that is creating different jobs where it is not about just manually writing the code, but now having a higher level of awareness to know how to interrogate the code properly, the testing and the validation, or the creation or the innovation. So I think those are the incremental shifts that a leader has to think and see and make and present to his team.
And I love that too, your emphasis on empathy, because again, it's the part that I think people lose in their excitement, is they emphasize that this AI transformation is about the tech. It's about the cool new features we'll be able to have. But I love that idea that maybe the successful rollout, you really need to emphasize the tremendous human possibilities, the things that really are uniquely human about your value proposition as a company, and how AI will accentuate that. I think I've heard that from some people that I've spoken to, that one of the things is AI will shake away the things that were not kind of core to your value offering, but they were things that you just had to do, and they will allow you then to accentuate what actually makes you special and unique. And it's that context that humans bring. Hilariously, context means double things in AI, but they would say it's that context awareness, that knowledge of your customers, your product, what you're building, and how you want to build it, the value sets that kind of AI will find very difficult to replace. And so it's kind of like, I like that idea of emphasizing what can my people do now with AI, rather than what will AI do, and then we'll deal with the repercussions later.
Yeah, so I think what I would frame it a little more succinctly is that AI isn't about replacing the humans, but a business leader's role comes in because they have to reframe what the humans can do best. So if you're truly a leader and you understand your people and the skill set, then pivoting them to a more context driven and what is value adding would be the next thing a leader has to think about. And that is one of the responsibilities of integrating AI as well.
Priya, we're coming pretty close to the end of our time. And so I thought I would ask you about this companion book, the AI Leadership Compass, that I know you're working on. It's not published yet, is it?
No, it's on its way, but not yet.
Okay, yes. I was going to say, because if it's out, I was going to buy it, but I'm very interested in following this. But I thought maybe you could help us understand, based on the kind of the conversations we've had today, what does this entail, and what can people look forward to in what you're producing?
So one of the aspects of the book is that I give them 7 very broad moves that they can focus on, because we don't want to churn the ocean. We don't want to overwhelm a senior leadership who has so many other aspects and dimensions of management that they have to work with. I want to make it as simple. The book tries to kind of provide them, hey, you're doing something in a certain way. How do you pivot that thought process? So I do use a lot of analogies. I learned that helps to fix this ideas in place, because it's human, and we are all human, to relate to some other experiences that you have, and that allows you to think in more orthogonal dimensions about the problem. So the idea is the book gives analogies on how to understand different aspects of the AI problem as such. So for example, we talked about Excel, right? If you go back in time, there's also the idea of the car. Today we have the self-driving car, but when the car first came, the automobile, it was an automated mobile unit, which is where the automobile came from. I found that the adoption of that was not easy. Mm-hmm. It took a much longer time for that single person automobile to be converted into a electric or a gas driven bus. AI has changed in the sense, at the very get-go in 2022, we were able to get and access all this wonderful technology. So the book really offers an executive the ability to understand, peruse, and go through some use cases that kind of fixes how to approach the problem, how have others approach this problem, and then leaves them with reflections, questions that they need to ask of themselves, of the team, of the organization. This is meant so that I cannot customize my book to every leader's problem. The maturity are different. But the leader needs to just to think about these simple steps. And if they've done it, great. There is an activity, a call to action. How can you take your first steps into getting those questions answered, or getting an understanding that AI challenge that I've set you up with? So I kind of go through what are the typical challenges, like you and I talked about, human in the loop, Or is it about reframing rather than just substituting? So it's more complementary approach to human and your team. Let's talk about them as team, people, the empathy. How do you make that happen? And that is how I've structured the book. So each area talks about the moves that you need to make, how you make the moves, and you know what? Here are a few things that you can take and follow through. It's nothing too complicated. It's simple. It's actionable. And you know what? Pick a chapter, right? You don't have to read the whole book. So that is the purpose of the book, is to be as a guide, to be as a reference, so that if they feel they are lacking in some area and their leadership compass needs to be moved, the needle needs to be moved a bit, seek out the chapter, read it up, and hopefully they will get inspired to take the next step and not be fearful of taking the next step.
I really like that. I do love the power of metaphor and story to kind of inspire. I think that's often true with language as well, right? If you never read other material, other books, all you can really do is communicate in the same words you always have been, right? And so I think with AI, it's much the same. We've done business in the same way for some of us decades, and I think it's very difficult to see beyond the walls of that in a moment of true transformation and transformational potential as we are in now. I think metaphor, story, and observing, what other people have done, very powerful here. I remember seeing this chart that sort of said, you talked about older technologies, and it sort of talked about the older technologies by the pace at which they were adopted by the market. So how market saturation, and you go back and you look at automobiles, you look at the television, right? And these went over years, sometimes decades to get market saturation. Then you look at the internet was, maybe a decade or two.
Yep.
AI, it's been like a year or 2 years. It's been 18 to 24 months. And it has reached deeper market saturation than any of those technologies have. I mean, this has been one of the wildest moments that I can remember seeing, at least in my career and in my lifetime, as far as changing the way that we operate. And I think that what I like about the way that you've structured your approach to your class and the way that you've talked about this issue is to emphasize that this is not as easy as going out and signing a check to buy the AI. This is like sort of digital transformation before it. This is truly a change in how we do business. And so I like that idea of really beginning with those fundamental principles of what are our business values, who are our stakeholders, what are we really trying to emphasize here, and how does AI enhance that, as being a good way for leaders to do this in a way that is durable and not just out of date as soon as they've installed a new system and then feel like they're done.
And the sustainability is very important, as you and I discussed in this call or before the call. AI is just evolving so rapidly, so one really has to think, how are you going to present it to the CFO? What is the value proposition? How is the market going to be seeing this? And also the customer. We can't leave the customer behind in this journey. They have to be part of your AI journey. Very close.
Wonderful. Well, Priya, can you help me point people in the right direction if they've enjoyed this conversation, they want to hear more from you, or they're interested in either the class that we referenced or the book that you'll be writing?
So absolutely. You can go to my LinkedIn site. It's Priya Sarathy, and you should find me there. The doctor, the PhD might help you locate me easier. And we will be coming out with another workshop soon in the fall. Be on the lookout with that. Join and connect with me on LinkedIn. And the book, I'll send it to you, Rob. I'll send the book to you for your reviews.
Oh, wonderful.
And you can tell me how it goes and share it with the audience.
Oh, very excited to do that. Yes, and we'll make sure that there are links in the show notes to all the things that we just referenced so that you can find them more easily. But, thank you so much, Priya, for being here today. That's going to be it for our episode. Thanks to all of you for listening. We hope to see you all next time. And as we close out, we would just like to thank today's sponsor, This.Labs, one last time, who would like me to remind you that sometimes it's hard to bridge the gap between business objectives and tech implementation, and it can get messy. This dot is trusted by top names like Meta, Google, and T-Mobile, and they love helping business leaders fulfill their strategic digital initiatives. Check them out at thisdot.co. One more time, that's THISDOT.co. Thanks, everybody. See you all next time.
Thank you very much.